Now, a man thought to have trafficked, wait for it, 10,000 illegal migrants across the Channel to the UK on small boats has been jailed today for 11 years. Gheorghe Nica was arrested by the National Crime Agency. Their officers arrested him on May 2022 as part of one of the biggest people smuggling trials ever held in Europe. The 30-year-old directed a major smuggling network from his home in East London, sourcing boats in Turkey and then delivering them to locations in Germany, Belgium and the Netherlands. Investigators believe that his gang made more than £200,000 on some crossings. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Ben Habib. He's a former MEP. He's now deputy leader of the Reform UK party. Good afternoon to you, Ben.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I mean, I don't know where we even start with this because the figures are just so extraordinary. This is one of the biggest operations, one of the biggest trials. 20 of the 21 defendants were found guilty. This man has now been sentenced to prison. Thank goodness. But let's just start, first of all, with the numbers involved. 10,000 migrants, illegal migrants, smuggled across the Channel by just this one people trafficking operation. This gives us an idea of the scale of this. But this man, of course, says, hey, I wasn't the boss. I was just a cog in the machine. It wasn't me, Gov.
Well, he probably was a cog. It probably is a bigger organisation than, just the 10,000 that he... It's a bigger organisation that got those 10,000 people across the Channel. I'm sure of that. That accounts for about over a fifth of the take of crossings, if you like, in 2022. So it's a big catch. But what's remarkable about it for me, Julia, is that this is the first major criminal that's been banged up for these crossings, which seem to take place with impunity. And it's not as if people smuggling is undercover. 330,000 people, according to the EU, entered Europe illegally last year. They're visible. They walk along the same routes, channeled by the same people, using the same boats, launching from Calais in the same places. And why is it that law enforcement in Europe seems to be completely asleep at the wheel? Yeah. We should be seeing tens of thousands of these prosecutions. People should be banged away regularly. And then, of course, the other really eye-catching thing is that this man had successfully applied for asylum himself.
Well, I mean, let's just go there, because these facts are quite... When I read this, I thought... this is just, it's taking the mick doesn't do justice. So turns out this man arrived in Britain quite some years. He's 30 years old. I mean, all credit to him. The man, if he went into legal work, the man would be a very successful businessman. He arrived back in, I think, 2016. Well, when he claimed asylum. He came in hiding on a lorry. He originally, by the way, tried to set up a business as a barber. That failed, so he opened a small food retailer selling confectionery. And it turned out people were coming in to use the Hawala banking system, which leaves almost no trail. And they were using it to transfer money to enable them to pay for themselves or other members of their family to pay for these trips on dinghies across the Channel. And he obviously thought, oh, I think I'll get in on this. So he's charging up to $6,000 for each one of these places on these boats. But what is really extraordinary is he applies for asylum. He claims to be from Iran, claiming he was being a subject of persecution. But it is later emerged that actually he was probably not from Iran. This wasn't his name, and that he is, in fact, Hama Koshnau, and he's actually from the Iraqi city of Erbil and is an Iraqi Kurd. But basically, he thought he had a better chance if he said he was from Iran. So we don't know who this guy is. He arrives in this country smuggled in the back of a lorry, which used to be the main modus operandi for smugglers until they decided it was easier to get in by boat. Then he sets up a store. He gets given asylum, sets up a store, and then starts bringing tens of thousands of other people over. I mean, we've walked into this nonsense.
Yeah. We have completely, and it evidences why borders are so important and why enforcing borders is so important. We need to know who's coming into this country. And frankly, our asylum system is a joke. Apart from the backlog of 180,000 applicants that are waiting to have their application determined, we do know, we've heard Home Secretary instructions in order to speed up getting rid of that backlog, to just do it on written applications, not to interview people. And if you do get to the interview stage and you suspect someone's lying to you, not to press them too hard, because they might have come from traumatic experiences in their past. So our whole system has opened itself up to this abuse. You mentioned that lorries were their favourite way to come across until they chose boats. Actually, it was us that indicated to them that we're so weak, so politically inept, that if people assault the United Kingdom across the Channel, we will let them in.
Yeah.
And what we've got to do,
and I said, them. I mean, we'll pick them up in the middle of the Channel and escort them. Come over.
We will escort them in. It's not border force; it's a border taxi service. RNLI, which holds itself out to be this virtuous body that saves people at sea, and I'm sure they do save people at sea.
Come on, the volunteers for the Royal National Lifeboats are incredible heroes. Come on.
Sure, but they go into French waters. There's evidence of them going into French waters, taking people who are perfectly safe on these dinghies. And remember, these people get on these dinghies of their own free will, having paid good money to get on them, picking these people up and bringing them back to shore. And that can't be the job of the RNLI. There is a French equivalent, the name of which escapes me at the moment. They make no pickups in the Channel. And what we've got to do is learn to turn the boats back. And the next criticism, whenever I say that,
I never allow that to stand, because you can't turn the boats back. They'll just say they'll carry on going. The only thing you can do is you pick the people up, and then you just simply take them to the French shore again. And the French should have an agreement that we can do that. The fact that the French don't want to do that isn't because, if only we had Keir Starmer in charge of those negotiations, Emmanuel Macron would agree to it. It's because they don't want the people back. They're glad to be shot at them.
Absolutely. But Julia, I'm going to disagree with you. You can turn the boats back. Belgium has a similar problem with people leaving their shores on dinghies. 90% of those boats are intercepted at sea and sent back to the shores by Belgian authorities. They are stopped. And the Italians need to get a grip of their problem. So do the Western Balkans and the Greeks. They're dealing not with dinghies, they're dealing with ferries and much bigger ships. They need to learn from the Australians, who had Operation Sovereign Borders, including, the taking control of these boats and sailing them back to where they came from. We've got to develop some backbone in the United Kingdom. And I know, obviously, you've been talking about Hamas, you've been talking about what's going on in Israel. Whenever there is a massive military intervention in the Middle East, North Africa, Near East, there will then subsequently be an influx of people potentially radicalized. You were talking about on your program just before I got on. Potentially radicalized, wishing to come into the UK and wishing to come here in order to do harm. We've got to get a grip of this problem. Suella Braverman, I thought, made a very brave speech for a cabinet minister. First time I've heard a cabinet minister actually spell it right out, and all credit to her for doing so. But now we need to back that up with real action. And it doesn't come through domestic legislation for deportation. It doesn't come through streamlining the asylum service. It doesn't come through providing safe routes from France, of which there are already millions. It comes from enforcing our borders. Other countries do it. We've got to start enforcing our borders. Yes,
indeed. And again, this idea that makes you nasty if you do it, or bigoted. It's very, very bizarre. A country isn't a country without national borders. I think this is something that a lot of EU nations are beginning to realise right now. Ben Habib, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, former MEP, and now a deputy leader of the Reform UK Party.